The biggest betrayal in life is not always done by enemies, strangers, or people who openly hate us. The deepest and most painful betrayal often comes from expectations, illusions, and sometimes even from our own mind. Human beings usually spend their lives fearing betrayal from others, but very few realize that the greatest deception often happens silently within themselves. People blame friends, lovers, family members, society, fate, or circumstances for their suffering, yet many times the real source of pain is the false understanding with which they live. The world can deceive you once or twice, but if your own mind is filled with illusions, fear, ego, insecurity, and unrealistic expectations, then you unknowingly keep betraying yourself every single day. This inner betrayal becomes more dangerous because it is difficult to recognize. External betrayal is visible. Internal betrayal hides behind emotions, desires, excuses, and comforting lies. A person may think they are moving toward happiness while actually moving deeper into confusion and suffering. One of the biggest deceptions in life is the illusion that lasting happiness can come entirely from external things. Since childhood, people are conditioned to believe that success, money, relationships, status, fame, beauty, possessions, or social approval will finally make them complete. Society constantly teaches that fulfillment lies outside. People run endlessly, chasing achievements, attention, validation, and material comfort, believing that one more accomplishment will bring permanent peace. Yet, after every achievement, a strange emptiness returns. The excitement fades. The satisfaction disappears. Then, the mind creates another target. This endless cycle becomes a silent betrayal because a person spends decades running without understanding what they are truly searching for. The mind promises happiness in the future but never allows contentment in the present. It says, once you get this, then you will finally feel complete. But the moment one desire is fulfilled, another desire is born. This endless chase becomes a prison. The biggest deception is not that the world tricks you. It is that your own mind keeps convincing you that fulfillment is always somewhere else. Another major betrayal comes from attachment to people. Human beings often expect others to permanently satisfy their emotional needs. They seek security, identity, validation, and meaning through relationships. They say things like, "I cannot live without you," believing it is love, but often it is emotional dependency. The problem begins when expectations become larger than reality. People expect others to always understand them, always remain loyal, always behave according to their wishes, and never change. But human beings are imperfect, emotional, confused, evolving creatures. Everyone changes with time, circumstances, experiences, and emotions. When reality does not match expectations, heartbreak appears. Then people say, "I was betrayed." Sometimes the betrayal is real, but many times the pain comes from unrealistic expectations built by the mind. We create idealized images of people and then suffer when those images collapse. We expect permanence in an impermanent world. This itself becomes a form of self-deception. Life constantly changes, yet the mind desperately seeks certainty. Another great betrayal is the ego. Ego is not just pride. It is the false identity we create about ourselves. It is the image we want others to believe. People spend huge portions of their lives protecting this artificial identity. They fear criticism because it threatens the ego. They compare themselves constantly because the ego wants superiority. They seek validation because the ego depends on external approval. They become jealous because the ego feels insecure. The ego creates endless suffering because it is never satisfied. Even successful people often remain restless because the ego always wants more recognition, more respect, more control, more importance. It whispers, "You are not enough yet." The tragedy is that people sacrifice peace, relationships, honesty, and mental health just to feed this false identity. Ego creates conflict not only between individuals but also within oneself. It becomes one of the greatest deceivers because it prevents self-awareness. A person controlled by ego cannot see reality clearly. They see only what protects their self-image. Another powerful betrayal comes from time itself, or more accurately, from our misunderstanding of time. Human beings behave as if life is endless. They postpone happiness, postpone self-understanding, postpone love, postpone peace, postpone healing, and postpone living authentically. People say, "One day I will enjoy life," without realizing that life is happening now. Years pass in stress, competition, anxiety, comparison, and meaningless routines. Suddenly, youth disappears. Energy decreases. Relationships fade. Parents grow old. Opportunities vanish. Then regret appears. One of the cruelest realizations in life is understanding too late what truly mattered. Many people spend their healthiest years chasing money while ignoring peace, family, health, and inner growth. Then later they spend money trying to recover the health and peace they sacrificed. Time silently reveals the deception under which people live. Another betrayal comes from comparison. Modern society constantly encourages comparison through social status, social media, achievements, beauty standards, wealth, popularity, and lifestyle. People begin measuring their worth based on others. Instead of understanding themselves deeply, they become obsessed with proving themselves. This comparison destroys inner peace because there will always be someone richer, smarter, more attractive, more successful, or more admired. The mind trapped in comparison can never rest. Even success becomes painful because fear of losing status appears. Comparison creates insecurity, jealousy, and dissatisfaction. It steals gratitude. A person may have a beautiful life, yet still feel miserable because they are busy comparing it to someone else's highlight reel. This becomes a huge deception because people start living for appearances rather than authenticity. They smile publicly while suffering privately. Another major betrayal is fear. Fear controls countless human decisions. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of loneliness, fear of judgment, fear of loss, fear of uncertainty, fear of death. Because of fear, people hide their true selves, avoid risks, stay in toxic situations, suppress emotions, and live according to others' expectations. Fear slowly imprisons the human spirit. Many dreams die not because they were impossible, but because fear convinced people not to try. Fear creates imaginary prisons stronger than real ones. The painful truth is that most fears never even happen, yet people sacrifice years of their lives obeying them. Fear deceives by pretending to protect you while actually limiting your growth and freedom. Another deep betrayal comes from desire without awareness. Desire itself is natural, but unconscious desire creates endless suffering. Human beings constantly crave pleasure, stimulation, excitement, recognition, and distraction. The mind becomes addicted to chasing temporary satisfaction. But temporary pleasures cannot provide lasting fulfillment. Whether it is money, fame, attention, entertainment, addiction, or unhealthy relationships, the pattern remains the same. The mind experiences temporary excitement, and then emptiness returns. Instead of understanding the emptiness, people seek stronger distractions. This creates cycles of addiction, dependency, and emotional exhaustion. Consumer culture encourages this endlessly because dissatisfied people keep consuming more. The world profits from human insecurity. People are constantly told they are incomplete unless they buy something, achieve something, or become something else. This creates a society full of restless minds. Another betrayal is false success. Society defines success mainly through money, power, fame, and external achievements, but many people who achieve these things still feel deeply unhappy. Why? Because outer success cannot automatically solve inner emptiness, a person may become wealthy, yet remain lonely, famous, yet anxious, powerful, yet emotionally broken. Society often celebrates people without understanding their inner condition. Young people then blindly chase the same goals, believing they will guarantee happiness. But true fulfillment involves emotional health, meaningful relationships, self-respect, peace of mind, purpose, and inner balance. Without these, success can feel hollow. The deception lies in believing that outer achievement alone can create inner fulfillment. Another painful betrayal comes from dishonesty toward oneself. Many people know deep inside that they are unhappy, pretending, or living against their true nature. Yet they continue, because change feels difficult. Some stay in toxic relationships because they fear loneliness. Some stay in meaningless careers because they fear uncertainty. Some hide their emotions because they fear vulnerability. Some pretend to be strong while collapsing internally. This self-betrayal becomes dangerous because ignored truth eventually becomes suffering. The more a person disconnects from their authentic self, the emptier life feels. Inner conflict grows silently. Mental exhaustion increases. The soul longs for honesty, but fear keeps people trapped in performance. Another great deception is believing that suffering automatically gives wisdom. Suffering alone does not guarantee growth. Some people become wiser through pain, others become bitter. Wisdom comes from awareness, reflection, and understanding. Without awareness, suffering simply repeats itself in different forms. Many people keep making the same mistakes because they never truly understand themselves. They change partners but not patterns. They change jobs but not mindsets. They change environments but not consciousness. The external story changes while the internal confusion remains the same. One of the biggest betrayals is unconscious living. Most people operate through habits, conditioning, social programming, emotional reactions, and automatic thoughts without deeply questioning their lives. They inherit beliefs from family, society, religion, culture, and media without examining whether those beliefs create truth or suffering. Conscious living requires courage because it means questioning everything, including your own assumptions. Many avoid this because comfortable illusions feel safer than uncomfortable truths. Another betrayal is the misunderstanding of love. Many people mistake attachment, control, obsession, dependency, or physical attraction for love. Real love involves respect, freedom, understanding, trust, and emotional maturity. But unhealthy attachment creates jealousy, possessiveness, manipulation, and emotional instability. People then suffer greatly and conclude that love itself is painful, when actually unconscious attachment created the pain. Love can heal, but emotional dependency often destroys peace. Another major deception is believing that external validation determines self-worth. Social approval has become a powerful addiction. People seek likes, praise, attention, admiration, and recognition to feel valuable. But depending entirely on external validation creates emotional slavery because your happiness becomes controlled by others' opinions. One compliment makes you happy. One criticism destroys your confidence. This instability creates constant anxiety. True self-worth must arise internally. Otherwise, life becomes a performance designed to gain approval. Another betrayal comes from ignoring mortality. Human beings intellectually know that life is temporary, yet emotionally they behave as if death belongs only to others. This denial creates superficial living. People waste precious years in ego battles, resentment, greed, hatred, and meaningless stress without realizing how fragile life truly is. Awareness of mortality can actually bring wisdom because it clarifies priorities. When you understand deeply that life is limited, unnecessary conflicts lose importance. Gratitude increases. Presence deepens. Love becomes more meaningful. Yet most people avoid thinking about death because it threatens the ego's illusion of permanence. Another deception is the belief that control creates safety. Human beings constantly try to control outcomes, people, relationships, and the future. But life remains unpredictable. No amount of planning can remove uncertainty completely. The more people try to control everything, the more anxious they become because reality never fully obeys human expectations. True peace comes not from absolute control but from inner resilience and acceptance. Acceptance does not mean passivity. It means understanding reality clearly without fighting every aspect of life emotionally. One of the greatest betrayals also comes from language itself. People say, "I understand," but often they merely repeat borrowed ideas without deep realization. Intellectual knowledge is not the same as lived wisdom. A person may read hundreds of books about peace, yet remain internally chaotic. Transformation requires awareness, not merely information. Modern society provides endless information, but very little self-understanding. Another silent betrayal comes from distraction. People constantly distract themselves with phones, entertainment, social media, gossip, work, or noise because silence forces self-confrontation. In silence, unresolved emotions appear. Loneliness appears. Fear appears. Questions about meaning appear. So the mind escapes continuously. But constant distraction prevents deep understanding. A distracted life may feel busy, yet remain empty. Another painful deception is believing that everyone thinks about you constantly. In reality, most people are too busy dealing with their own fears and insecurities. Yet many individuals sacrifice authenticity because they fear judgment excessively. They imprison themselves trying to satisfy imaginary expectations. Years later, they realize they were living someone else's version of life. Another betrayal is resentment. Holding hatred may feel justified, but it slowly poisons the person carrying it. Resentment keeps painful memories alive repeatedly. Forgiveness does not always mean approving harmful actions, but it means refusing to remain psychologically chained to past pain. Many people lose years emotionally fighting battles that already ended long ago. Another deep deception comes from believing emotions are absolute truth. Emotions are real experiences, but they are not always accurate reflections of reality. Fear can exaggerate danger. Anger can distort perception. Attachment can create obsession. Sadness can create hopelessness. Without awareness, people become controlled entirely by temporary emotional states. Wisdom involves observing emotions without blindly obeying them. Another betrayal comes from chasing perfection. Perfectionism creates constant dissatisfaction because reality is naturally imperfect. Human beings are imperfect. Relationships are imperfect. Life is imperfect. The pursuit of impossible perfection often destroys joy, creativity, and peace. Many people delay living fully because they wait for perfect conditions that never arrive. Another powerful deception is the belief that happiness is a permanent emotional state. Life naturally contains joy, pain, uncertainty, beauty, loss, love, and change. Expecting constant happiness creates frustration because no human experience remains fixed forever. Peace comes more from acceptance and balance than from endless pleasure. Another betrayal comes from blindly following the crowd. Society often rewards conformity more than authenticity. People fear standing alone, so they imitate trends, opinions, lifestyles, and beliefs without questioning whether those paths align with their true nature. But following the crowd unconsciously can lead to a deeply unfulfilled life. Courage is required to think independently. Another deep deception is believing that material comfort automatically equals meaningful living. Comfort can improve life, but meaning comes from deeper dimensions such as connection, growth, contribution, creativity, awareness, and authenticity. A comfortable but purposeless life can still feel empty. Another betrayal is postponing self-awareness. People study the world extensively, yet rarely study their own minds. They know technology, news, entertainment, and external information but remain strangers to themselves. Without self-understanding, life becomes reactive and unconscious. The greatest wisdom begins with understanding your own fears, desires, patterns, attachments, and conditioning. Ultimately, the biggest betrayal in life may not come from one single person or event. It may come from living unconsciously, believing illusions, ignoring inner truth, and searching outside for what can only be discovered within. The world will always contain uncertainty, change, disappointment, and imperfection. But suffering becomes far greater when people refuse to see reality clearly. The greatest freedom begins when a person stops blaming everything outside and starts understanding themselves deeply. Awareness dissolves deception. Truth may feel uncomfortable at first, but it eventually brings clarity, peace, and inner strength. A conscious person may still experience pain, heartbreak, failure, and loss, but they are less likely to be destroyed by illusions because they see life more clearly. In the end, the biggest betrayal is not merely what others do to us. It is forgetting our own truth, losing ourselves in fear and illusion, and living without awareness of what truly matters.